It's May 29th, 2025, and we're so pleased to have you. And at this time, we were going to ask Elima de Costa, who is a member of the CRI, present us or lead us in the Ole. So if we can all stand.
Ola ika ha, ola ika vai, ola ika I, Hawaii, Hawaii, Hawaii. Ola ika ha, ola ika vai, ola ika I, Hawaii. Hawaii, Hawaii, ola ika ha, ola ika vai, ola ika I, Hawaii, Hawaii, Hawaii.
Thank you. Okay, at this time, we'll move forward with introductions. And first, we will start off with the members of the CRI that are present at the studio, which is the Olelo Studios, Olelo Community Studios. So this time, I'd like to call on Mia Lisa. If you please would introduce yourself.
My name is Mia Lisa Otis, at large, representing the community of Oahu. Mahalo.
Okay, and Elima de Costa.
Aloha, Ilima de Costa. I'm actually substituting for Mai Ha, who is celebrating her child's graduation. So go Mai. I am representing the Native Hawaiian interest this evening. Mahalo.
Okay, aloha. Bill South.
Yes, I'm Bill South. I'm at large. Excuse me. I'm representing the Environmental Caucus. That's it.
Okay, and Michelle Poplar.
Aloha, I'm Michelle Poplar. I'm at large and also representing affected community members.
Okay, and I'm Melody Aduha and co-chair of the Environmental Caucus of the Democratic Party, and I am being your moderator this evening. So thank you very much. And now we'll turn to those that are online. Another CRI member, Mandy Fine.
Aloha, everyone. Mandy Fine. I represent impacted families calling in from Virginia tonight. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And Jamie Simic.
Aloha, everyone. Jamie Simic, affected family member, filling in for Tara Sutton tonight.
Okay, and at this time, I also want to acknowledge our technical staff who are from the Women's Facility in Waimanalo, and they are volunteering their time and also learning how it is to produce a show. And it is our pleasure to have you here, definitely. And those that are here this evening, we have Ashley, Barbara, Nisha. I hope I'm saying that right. Okay, and Tehran and Kylie. So thank you so much for joining us. We're privileged to have you, and we hope that this is a very educational experience for all of you. And again, we thank the staff of Olelo for hosting us as here. This is our favorite venue. So we're always thrilled to be here. So thank you again. Okay, so let's go ahead and start off with the first topic on our agenda. It's regarding the outcome of the Feindt lawsuit. And we do have a guest speaker. And our guest speaker is Christina Baer. And if I can just give a brief introduction, she's a trial attorney and founder of Just Well Law, an Austin-based firm specializing in personal injury and toxic exposure cases. She advocates for individuals and families affected by environmental toxins, including toxic mold exposure and contaminated water. She's a graduate of Yale Law School 2012. And she's previously worked for a very popular litigation firm, McCool Smith, before she founded Just Well Law after her own family, this is interesting, her own family suffered from toxic mold exposure, losing their house due to negligent construction practices. Her most notable case is that she won a $3.1 million settlement on a toxic mold lawsuit holding home builders and HVAC, which is heating, ventilation, and air conditioning companies, accountable. So let's see. Her firm fights for clean air, clean water, and justice for those harmed by corporate negligence, and in this case, military negligence as well. So at this time, without any further ado, please, Christina, you have the floor.
Thank you. Well, let me start by saying mahalo for having me. I have to say that my most important case is absolutely this one. Will always be this one. And I want to reorient everyone to the case and what happened here on Oahu. Y'all know about, of course, the spill in November, but those tanks had been leaking for years. And there are members of this community, and I saw Marty just make an appearance too, just flashed across my screen. But y'all have been crying about those tanks for decades. And even before that November spill, the Sierra Club was already concerned about the spill that had happened in May. And you were already hosting events and talking about what are we going to do about it? And then this huge thing happened in November. So the fuel release in November 2021 was entirely predictable. It was preventable. We know that. So what happened? You mobilized. People on the island mobilized. Families like the Simics and the Fients and the Suttons and the Poplars and many others gathered together with the Oahu water protectors, and you took to the streets and you demanded justice, and you demanded that those tanks be shut down, and they were. And so when I talk about our case, and I will always talk about it this way, it was a community effort. It was a community of affected families with the people of Hawaii, with these organizations that had been working there for a very long time on these very issues, uniting together and taking a stand against the United States. And you took on the greatest superpower in the world and won. And you won in a few ways. One, you won when the tanks were shut down and defueling happened. And of course, the effects will be there forever. And then we took this case to trial last May. And the trial was a trial for representative families. There were 7 representative families, a total of 17. We call them bellwethers. And the judge just finally issued her judgment, and she found that every single one of them was harmed. Every single person that was a plaintiff in that case was harmed by the negligence of federal officers when they spilled jet fuel into the water and didn't tell people not to use it, and people used enough to get sick. Why is this important? Well, because it's true. But there had never been a successful environmental case against the United States that we know of. This is the very first successful environmental case against the United States. And there were a lot of lawyers who didn't want to take this case. And the stars aligned for me to be there at the right time. I had just left the United States as an assistant U.S. attorney. And so I knew how to bring claims against the United States. And I also didn't feel good because I was sick myself. And so I arrived on the island of Oahu, and I met Jamie, and I met Mandy, and I met so many of you. And you were sick, and I was sick in my own way. And I recognized that this had caused very real harm. And together we just kept standing up and uniting and passing the mic and using the mics that we had and the community that we had to take a stand. And so I'm really, really proud that we won this case. I also want to recognize that it was not enough. We're disappointed by the judge's numbers. And I told my clients over and over again that it would never be enough, that there was no number that would ever be enough. But we're disappointed by the numbers that she gave. And what that shows me is that we're really at the beginning of this effort of holding the government accountable for poisoning. And I say poisoning, I don't use that term lightly. The government knew the water was contaminated and let so many of you use it. They knew the water was contaminated. We got to show that at trial. So I want to take a minute and talk about some of the lessons that we learned from the case. And I think that we can take on to future cases and future efforts on the island of Oahu. One is, what is the purpose of the law? And tort law is about two things. The purpose of tort law, and when I stood up and did the opening statement for Judge Kobayashi, this is what I said. Tort law is about compensation for people who have been affected by exposures, but it's also about deterrence. And you can't have one without the other. And deterrence is this effort that it will never happen again, that if we continue to hold people accountable, they will stop this behavior. They will stop doing this. And we found here that the government was held accountable, not just in the dollar amounts, but also in the very finding of liability, in the government's decision to admit liability in this case, which was really extraordinary. So the government admitted liability, and then we went to trial on damages. So if the government admits liability, that means that it can be liable in other cases too. Maybe it'll be liable in other cases on Oahu for the other like litany of harms that it's doing right now. Maybe there are other cases to be brought under the Federal Tort Claims Act. But it also means that our friends at Camp Lejeune have a way that has been paved. There's more contamination at almost every military base in the country. We should be bringing claims. We should be finding opportunities to hold the government accountable, because one case at a time, we will be able to change their conduct. I guarantee you next time they're going to think twice before they hide under a bushel and don't tell people that the water's contaminated. I mean, they said there's no indication the water's not safe. And that was an outrageous position at the time. So we learned again about the purpose of the law. And I think, the justice system isn't perfect, but we were able to accomplish the deterrence and the accountability here. But we also learned a lot about how these cases should be tried. And this was a movement of families led first by Jamie Simic and then by the others who came and joined her. And I think that's the way that these community safety cases should be run in future cases in other places, because it's ultimately your movement together. It's you who took on the superpower. And the lawyers came and we hired experts and we litigated the case and we went to trial. But ultimately, it was always about you. And I want to do that more. I think that's not how mass torts are usually handled. And that's how they should be handled. And I think that this is an example that we can take forward in other places. And we can use it as a learning for how we should be holding big institutions accountable for poisoning our families. So I'm really proud of the efforts of all of you. And I wanted to come on and say thank you and answer any questions that you have about what happened here.
All right, members, are there any questions for Christina Bear?
I have a question.
Okay, Lima.
First, I wanted to thank you, Christina, so much for taking the time to, while you were sick, to come out and meet with impacted family members and helping them to basically cross the finish line. You indicated that there could be potentially other cases, and I'm wondering if if there's a possibility that that might involve individuals who are impacted from the Halava Correctional Facility.
Sign me up. I mean, I'm ready to fight. You know, I think that I don't know the specifics of that particular circumstance, but I'd be happy to talk about it more. You know, right now, I think everyone on our team is feeling a little bit tired. We need a break. So we're at once feeling tired, but at, you know, also feeling galvanized because we want to take on the bad guys and we want to do more. And there's never enough that we can do. And I want to convey to y'all that we left it all on the field and we would do it again in a heartbeat. And we will do it again. And it was the greatest, you know, one of the greatest honors of my life to get to participate in this case for, you know, for all of you. So thank you for inviting me into the story. And I'm working on a book about it. And one of the things I'm going to talk about in the book is when I came to this CRI and I asked the Navy whether there was enough fuel in the water to make people sick in November 2021. And I don't know if y'all remember that, but look, the Navy knew who I was. They knew exactly who I was. They didn't have to answer the question. But I asked the Navy, the EPA, and the Board of Water Supply whether there was enough fuel in the water to make people sick, because the Navy took the position in this case that there was not enough fuel in the water to make people sick. And I just thought that that was an outrageous position. And of course, you know, Board of Water Supply says, yes, people got sick. I mean, this is not rocket science, right? And the EPA stood up and said, yes, people got sick. And the Navy lost their minds because they could not believe that I asked them a question in a public setting. And they tried to, you know, get me disciplined to the bar, and they called me in front of the judge for sanctions. And I filed a stipulation with the government that I wouldn't, you know, ask another question again. But what I did was I actually filed the transcript of that CRI meeting in the court, because I want there to be a history of what happened here and of the Navy's conduct in litigating this case, which I really thought was unfair. I think to say that there wasn't enough fuel in the water to make people sick is denying a historic event. It really is. It's an outrageous position. And for them to come into a court flying in from Washington, D.C., and to stand up in that courthouse and to make that argument was, I believe, shameful for the Department of Justice, because the Department of Justice is charged with doing the right thing. And when I worked at the Department of Justice, we were, you know, charged with being honorable. And I don't think it's honorable to come in and say people weren't sick when you know that people were. So one of the things that we won in the case was that, yes, people were sick, and yes, there was enough fuel in the water to make people sick. The problem, of course, is that when you fight a case like this in the time that we had, the long-term harm is yet to be known. So we know it's going to make people sick long-term. We know people are going to have cancer long-term, but you can't show that in the immediate aftermath of the event. So you're in this catch-22 because you have to litigate the case while you know it. You have to litigate it timely. And yet you can't prove the long-term harm that you know is going to happen because it hasn't happened yet. So that was one of the challenges that we faced in the case. And I think that we see that this case is part of a broader movement. And I wish Tara Sutton were here, but she's working on the registry, and now ATSDR is doing their study. And I think this case was one part of a broader movement to protect the people who were affected by Red Hill, both the people who lived on the base, but also the island. You know, I hope that there are more opportunities to hold the government accountable for what they did there. and what they continue to do.
Are there any other questions from the panel?
Hi.
No? Okay. Michelle?
Yes, on the note of the Halava area, I do have colleagues that live in near the Halava prison who reported smelling fumes, probably from the ventilation as well. And so that whole area, I feel, could be looked at for future litigation.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Well, I'm curious how y'all feel about litigation now that the case has concluded. Was it worth doing? Was it part of your overall strategy? How do you feel about it right now?
I feel that it was a win, and um, I'm grateful. I'm grateful for everyone that has participated in this movement. I'm grateful for Just Well Law, for the team, for you putting yourself out there and coming in, and grateful for Jamie for making that call. you know, um, I feel mostly gratitude. And even though the numbers are disappointing, I know that this is just the beginning of more accountability and more justice because we have to start somewhere.
Mhm.
Yeah, I have a question regarding the award just in general, because of course it's very difficult, as you're saying, to get an award for future medical expenses, and how can you gauge that? All right, but what about the past medical expenses? I mean, there's if I could take Mandy for example, having under her family having to suffer through 750 treatments and surgeries and what have you over the years, will they be reimbursed for that medical expenses? And then because of the next theory, I guess the next case that's coming up that does involve those that are on duty, or I guess military personnel, because this one that we're discussing is a civilian lawsuit. But then there's also the second lawsuit regarding those that are enlisted. So could you give us some insight as to how you suspect that's going to progress, as well as the medical expenses?
Thank you. Well, let me start with the second question, because I really want to applaud the active service members who were brave enough to bring these claims. They knew, unlike the families where we knew we had claims. For the service members, we really don't know if we have claims, because the government can assert something called the Ferris Doctrine, which says that active service members can't bring claims it depends on how it's phrased, but basically events that are incident to service. So if they're in Mandy, am I going to get this right? In the line of duty. If they're in the line of duty, then they can't bring a claim. And that's a good rule. And so we said for Mandy Fine was not in the line of duty when she was naked in her shower or bathing her newborn. And we believe that those service members have claims, and the government did not assert the Ferris Doctrine. And maybe they will, but they haven't yet. And I think the reason they haven't is because this community brought these issues into the light in a way that the government didn't want to take that chance on this case, didn't want to make that argument in this case. And that's why we have to keep fighting to make sure that they don't. But it's incredibly amazing what those service members did to bring these claims here. And if it sticks, and if we can settle those cases, then it will be the first time that service members, it'll be the first time that anyone can recover for an environmental injury against the United States. But it will be the first time that service members are able to recover for any big event against the United States. So that's just, thank you for raising that question. absolutely extraordinary. In terms of medical expenses, a lot of the medical for these families was provided by TRICARE. So that's a tricky dynamic in some of these cases because the government paid for the care. And what the government told the judge was basically like, look, judge, we did everything right. We provided medical care. We came in, we told people we moved them to hotels. We spent thousands of dollars on hotels. They tried to get offsets for the money that they spent on hotels. And the judge said, no, we won that argument. They were not able to get offsets. But for that reason, we weren't able to claim those medical expenses in the case. But we were able to prove injury, and she awarded money for injury. And just to put this in perspective, the families in Flint, people in Flint got like $8,000 in their case. People in East Palestine, Ohio, I met someone recently because I'm representing some of them now. And I didn't do the class action, but I met someone who got $2,500 from the class action in East Palestine, Ohio. So the numbers are just so low in these cases. And I hate that. And I don't think that's right. And I want that to change. And I am dedicating my life to making that change. But the judges, especially the older judges, have grown up in this system where, you got stage 4 cancer and you get $100,000. In Camp Lejeune, stage 4 cancer is going for $100,000. And it's really hard to convince that judge, is that what it's worth? Is that really what it's worth? Is that what it would be for your family? And I think I'm so passionate about this because it happened to my family. Because I'm not like just another lawyer or just another judge that thinks this happens to people down there. I mean, this happened to me. And if it happens to you, it's not $40,000. It's not $40,000. And I'm just going to continue to move forward and, find new and better ways to convey to these judges how devastating it is to be poisoned in your own home, especially the institutional betrayal, to be poisoned by your own government in your own home, to whom you have dedicated your life.
Can I go back to that 100,000? I mean, 100,000 for stage 4 cancer, that would not even compensate for medical expenses. So is that pain and suffering? Is that emotional distress? I mean, you could take a cancer pill could be $1,000. Treatment is so expensive.
Yeah. And in the mass tort context, and that's why I don't even like using the words mass torts. I like using community safety cases because I think these are community cases. But in the mass tort world, they have a trump card, which is you're never going to be able to prove every single claim. You can't. It would take years to come in here with 7,000 people, one by one by one. And so as a result, they basically discount it for volume. And I don't think that's right. But we didn't have stage 4 cancer here. We don't have that yet. And so this judge saw it as you had a rash, you had some tummy problems, and she's been on the bench for a long time. So in the overall scheme of things for someone who's been on the bench for a long time, it just wasn't, that's in her view, the going rate. And I don't believe it's the view of the clerks in that courtroom, that courthouse. I don't believe it's the view of the people coming up. And so we can just pray and continue to educate the new judge. I had a new judge here in Texas a couple of weeks ago for a hearing, and it was just a completely different experience because he was horrified by someone who was poisoned at home. And I was so encouraged by that. So I look, I'm not disparaging the judge. This is the world she grew up in, and this is her perspective on the case. I don't share it.
Okay, moving on. Jamie, you've been so patient.
I wanted
You
to
have
go
your
back. Aloha. I wanted to go back and first thank Christina and Jim when they very first came out. It was refreshing. I called many lawyers. I talked to several people, and Christina put in the work before she was even signed. She was already working. They were already hitting the ground. I want to go back to what you were saying regarding the Red Hill Registry and how this all came together because of the community and because it was a movement. It truly was a movement. There's not one single person that can say they broke this case open or can say that they stormed the way through it. It took every single person from the very first person that noticed something that was wrong with their water and was posting on social media to the first person that snuck media onto base to the very first person that was kicking in doors in DC and the first lawyers that got involved. There's a lot of firsts, but there's been a lot of continuum. And right now we have the Red Hill Registry going on and it's getting ready to launch. And this case was on a scope of only 10 days. It was a very small scope, and that's very difficult for a judge to rule long-term harm or give a tremendous award. We now have, because of all the people that have advocated and everybody that has stood the line and held the line and then pushed the line and kicked in the doors, we now have them admitting that yes, there is acute and subacute. Some people have been diagnosed with chronic. In order for that to continue, we need people to continue to stand up, continue to log into that registry, fill out that questionnaire, even if you don't think you had symptoms. That is the only way that we are going to truly prove the long-term harm down the road. We got NASM involved, we got AdStar involved, and we have the Red Hill Registry. Nobody thought that this would ever come to pass, and it's being done within what, 3 to 4 years? And it's because of the community. It's because of the Sierra Club. It's because of the Oahu Water Protectors. It's because of the CRI, and it's because of every single countless person that never gave up. Now's not the time to give up. The case, like, just because this little piece was won does not mean that we are done. And there's a lot of work to be done. And so I thank Christina for standing with us and standing tall with us. And I thank every single person that has attended all of these meetings, whether they've spoken up or not, Meredith Wilson, Kat McCallahan, everybody, but we need to continue to stand up and we need to continue to fight. And the registry is getting ready to launch. And when it does, that's the way to voice whether or not you think you were harmed. Great. If you don't think you were harmed, we need that data too. So we need as many people to continue to rise up, speak up, and fight for Oahu. There's the cleanup that is left. And there is a lot more that I'm sure is coming down the road that's not being discussed. And we need to continue to keep our foot on their necks. Sorry if that's graphic, but need to keep our foot on their necks. And I thank you, Christina. I thank you, Mandy, everybody on the panel, and everybody that was on the panel previously. This was a win, but there's still a lot of work to do and we can get it done. We did this and nobody thought we would do this. I remember when I first met with Christina and I told her about 2014 and she said, they'll never admit to it. They'll never talk about it. And here we are, we're fighting. So,
Yeah.
and we're going. So
Yeah, it was in those early days, it was the whole case was such a pipe dream.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Jamie?
everyone.
Yeah, we're good. Moving on. Well, thank you. Thank you, Christina. Thank you, Jamie. And Mandy. Okay, moving on. I think we would like to start talking about the reopening of these shafts. And that's the Navy's Aiea Halawa shaft as well as the Red Hill shaft. So at this time, I'd like to call our special guest, who is Joyce Lynn, of the Board of Water Supply. Yeah, we skipped. Yeah. Please come up and join us. Oh no, she can sit with us. If that's a yeah, she's getting used to sitting with us. Okay, so Joyce Lynn is a civil engineer at the Board of Water Supply in Honolulu, Hawaii since 2016, and she has specialized in water resource management and infrastructure safety, contributing to public conservation efforts and evaluating contamination risks relating to Red Hill. So we do have a few questions for you. And then you can go ahead and let us I'll give you 3 questions real quick, and then you can just go ahead and answer which ones you want to answer, or short answers on all of them. Okay, what is the current status regarding the reopening of the Aiea Shaft and Red Hill Shaft? What safeguards, if any, have been proposed to prevent future contamination? And how does the community feel about the risk associated with restarting these operations?
The questions later.
Okay.
But good evening, everyone. I'm Joyce Lynn with the Board of Water Supply. Thank you for the
I
invite.
think you've got to go a little closer to the microphone.
I can try.
Oh,
Is this better? Or do I have to?
Turned on.
Mic is on when lit, so it is lit up right now.
Closer to the.
Is this better now? Hello, hello. Let's test. Okay, you can't hear me.
do you want to try that one?
Try that.
Hey, just from Zoom, we could hear her at the table. I can't hear her on that mic though.
Oh.
We can read lips.
I'll try to project a little louder. But yeah, thank you so much for the invite. Ernie sends his apologies. He really wanted to be here tonight, but he had prior commitments, so he couldn't be here. So I'm here. And first question was, what are the status for the
Current status.
Current
the
status.
Reopening.
regarding the reopening of Aiea Halawa Shaft? This is the Navy's Aiea Halawa Shaft.
Yes.
And
And the Red Hill Shaft.
the Red Hill Shaft. So I would apologize, but I don't have the latest update just because it's not a Board of Water Supply water source. But I did attend the Navy Closure Task Force Red Hills open house just last week. And to my understanding, the Aiea Halawa Shaft that the Navy is trying to reactivate is currently going through a pilot study that is required by the DOH to test out the treatment method to make sure that the treatment system that they installed, which consists of the 12 GAC granulated active carbon tanks and the ion exchange at their Aiea Halawa Shaft, is going to be effective in removing contaminants that they are targeting, to my knowledge. And also it was confirmed during the open house by Navy representative that they are currently treating for PFAS, per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, PAH, which stands for polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, and also TPH, which stands for total petroleum hydrocarbons. So 3 types of contaminants are being treated at Aiea Halawa Shaft by the Navy. So this pilot study that they're doing is to sort of ground truth and make sure that the treatment system that they installed is going to be effective in removing those contaminants from that shaft. From what I know about the Red Hill Shaft, also again, based on discussions during the Navy Closure Task Force open house, that Red Hill Shaft is being planned for reactivation. So I think they are planning to submit their application for reactivation sometime in the fall of this year to the regulators. They might go through the same requirements of installing treatment. That's the most that I know of right now. I'm not too sure when the full facility is going to be reactivated. So I was also told that the Red Hill shaft is also going to be being treated, going to be going to have a treatment facility installed there to treat the same 3 contaminants as Aiea Halava shaft. That is what I was told at the time during the open house. So I hope that, I know that was a very long response, but I hope that addressed your question. Your second question?
The safeguards. I guess that would be the treatment facilities, basically.
Yes. So that the pilot study, I believe, is the regulators' safeguard to make sure that, excuse me, to make sure that it does do what it's meant to do, and that it can remove the contaminants from the shaft and provide safe drinking water for their people.
Okay, and then do you have a sense of how the community feels about any potential risks that are involved to reopen these 2 shafts?
Well, this community, I believe, have voiced their concerns many times over the years. The past year actually, about, reactivating the shaft so soon. And from the Board of Water Supply standpoint is that we have also been voicing our concerns to EPA and DOH through letters and also just different public forums. There's still just so much unknown in the underground aquifer, how water moves, what is the characteristic of our geology is like underneath the tanks, how things are spreading. We are not too sure just yet. So reactivating of the wells, even with the treatment system, we just don't know what the effects would be until it does happen. So I'm sorry.
Okay, any questions, panel?
Yes, I do have
Oh,
a
okay.
question, Joyce. Again, this goes back to, first of all, they have the granular activated carbon systems.
Yes.
And you have a follow-up. What was the one for additional?
That's the ion exchange
which helps remove some of the short chain
of the PFAS.
PFAS.
Correct.
Now, the ion exchange, there's others like reverse osmosis and advanced oxidation processes. Do you know anything about those, or is that anion exchange the best one system to use?
Well,
in conjunction with the GAC?
I'm not too sure what led to their determination of using GAC and ion exchange in that combination. What I do know about treatment system is that yes, the GAC is really good at breaking down the longer chain PFAS. These are usually PFAS found in older AFFF formulas, and then the ion exchange is like a follow-up that helps treat anything that doesn't get broken down or goes through the GAC. I'm not too sure why they chose those 2 specifically. My best guess is that it's more readily available in terms of operations and maintenance. Maybe that's something that they took into consideration.
And they will be able to quantify the removal.
I'm not too sure what sort of testing they're doing, but I assume with the pilot study, they will be testing for the water samples before entering the treatment system and then after the treatment system to kind of see how effective it is. Yeah, that's okay. Does that answer your questions?
Thank you, Joyce.
Okay, Melissa?
Hey, Joyce. Thank
Hello.
you for coming tonight. I know that they had mentioned in the last meeting that the pilot's going to start in June anytime, so could be anytime next week. I wanted to know how close to the public shaft and lines is the Navy line? Like, will it possibly, can it affect us again?
Sorry, so how close there
In
IAEA Halawa
proximity
shaft?
to Board of Water supply lines
So
and shafts?
well, they are completely separate water mains compared to the Board of Water's water mains. As of right now, I don't have the schematic to see where they overlay or intersect. But the Board of Water Supply, we do have an emergency connection with them, so we can provide emergency service to the Navy, the Joint Base Pearl Harbor system, should they need that assistance. I think one of the reasons why they are trying to bring these sources back online is because they are currently just relying on one source, and that is a risk in terms of water system operating because there's no redundancy on the source. So if anything does happen to their one source at Waiava, they don't have any water. So we have that emergency connection available should something do happen. And we have provided that emergency connection when they had a main break in the past. But that emergency connection only gets turned on with approval of our manager and chief engineer. And before we even turn it on, we have to make sure that they have the backflow prevention devices in place and that it's working properly before we even allow to manually connect.
So our line would be at a shortage if we have to supply it to the Navy lines.
It depends on how much and for how long.
Okay.
Yeah.
And my other question is, that someone was concerned of is, can you recommend an independent firm to test our waters in our homes on base and in the community?
I'm sorry, I don't really know of any. I'm not a water quality person.
Okay.
I apologize. So I don't
Thank
have any
you.
recommendations at this time.
Thank you.
Can I follow up with that? Where is this emergency connection? Where is it located?
Actually don't know, and I'm not sure if I can actually share that with you because it is it's part of our water system utility, so that's actually critical infrastructure information that we can't really share.
Okay, and then you said something about it would only be turned on if there's, I think, a backup or.
So it can be turned. It is activated when, should I say, for example, if the Navy has which happened in the past, is they had a really big water main that broke. I think it was near the Pearl City area, Best Buy, that area, and on Cam Highway. And they basically lost water. They can't really provide water to the east side of their system. So when that happened, they would contact our manager and request for assistance. And from there, we create a team internally to meet with the Navy's teams to make sure that we have all the safeguards in place. And then once we test all the backflow preventers, make sure it works, and then we would go back to the manager like, okay, everything works, and then he'll give us the okay. And we usually ask them, how long do you need this connection for? And then we try to really coordinate with them in real time and make sure that they close out that connection as soon as they can, because they're trying to fix their line at the same time too. So as soon as they finish fixing their repairing their leak and their main, then they'll let us know, and then we'll have someone out there and manually close out all the connections.
Is there any risk of any cross-contamination having this emergency connection?
No, because it would be physically off, like disconnected.
Right now it's off.
Yeah, it is disconnected.
Okay.
If it only goes on if emergency happens.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions?
I do have a
yes,
question.
Michelle.
On that, when that incident occurred, what year and month was that? Because I seem to recall, I live in Capilina Beach Homes, in Eva, and I recall that period of time, when the water main broke, and we weren't getting water to our side. And I'm not sure if this was the same incident or not. But that would be interesting, considering that in the case last May, they would state that the water did not reach Ford Island and it did not reach Catalina Beach homes. So I find that interesting.
Yeah. I can't recall exactly when, but I would say within the past 2 years.
Yeah, that's about when it happened, was within the last 2 years. Mhm.
Yeah.
Interesting, huh?
Okay, we have a question that came in here to ask you about the aquifer. How does turning this aquifer back on affect the rest of the water supply?
Hmm. How does it affect our supply? So with the Aiea Halawa shaft reactivated, they are limited to their water use permit that is administered by the Department of Land and Natural Resources Commission on Water Resources. They have a water use permit and they're only permitted to pump out whatever amount that is permitted under their water use permit. And I think Aiea Halawa shaft, their permit goes up to about 500,000 gallon a day or something like that. So how it would affect the water supply in terms of quantity should be sustainable within that limit. But with the turning on Aiea Halawa shaft and start pumping consistently, I think that goes back to one of the concerns that we've had or consistently have is we're not sure how it might shift a potential contaminant plume that's in the aquifer. Would it draw it closer to that side of the island or that side of the valley, Aiea Halawa shaft? We don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the risk that we we don't have enough monitoring wells, I suppose, or because in the aquifer itself, you can't really monitor it.
There are, I know the Navy have installed in their latest update up to 46 monitoring wells. But most of those monitoring wells are still just within the Red Hill Bulk Fuel Storage Facility property line. Some of them are outside, but in terms of monitoring wells along the between the facility, the fuel tank farm, and Aiea Halawa shaft, I'm not too sure if there's enough monitoring well to really capture any potential the potential movements.
I think we can all agree there's not enough monitoring wells.
Yeah.
Okay. Jamie, again, patiently, you have your
No
hand
worries.
up.
No worries. I just had a question about if you had to turn on the emergency valves, it's kind of two parts because you gave an example of a pipe bursting. Is there a notification process to the public that would be quicker than the notifications that we got with Red Hill and when the leaks happened? And if there's a pipe burst, say that's one of the reasons why normally there would be a boil water notice that would come to that to the public because of leaching and other contaminants can be mixing. Or if you find that the plume is drawing closer or there is issues, what is the notification process to the public? And are they able to use the emergency management system in order to send out text alerts to let the public know not to use the water? Because sometimes social media or media outlets don't necessarily get the message out quick enough.
Yeah. In terms of notification to the community, I think that responsibility goes, it's part of the water system operators or their responsibility should there be a main break. They are don't quote me on this, but I don't know if it's required, but I think if it's something small, they can fix within a set amount of time, then I'm not too sure what that notification process is like for the Navy. I know from the Board of Water Supply, should we have a main break, we always have it updated on our website. I think, yeah. But anything beyond that in terms of the boil water advisory, um, I think that comes after. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm not too familiar with how our communication goes out, but I just know that we provide that update on our website.
Okay, and if there is, again with the plume, if we know that that's drawing closer from the testing, will
Mhm.
there be a quicker notification than what was delivered last time? Because that is one of the issues that a lot of the affected families, community and outlying community had issue, we didn't know for days, and relying on the military when that cup was held up saying our water is fine. Those are great time periods of where people are falling ill, when if there was an earlier notification system, people could have stopped using the water and we could have stopped people from being sick.
For sure. I I hope that the Navy would have learned from the past and do better in notifying the community should that happen again. I know for us at the Board of Water Supply, should we detect any sort of potential contaminant, Ernie's usually very good about being transparent. We try to notify the regulator, let them know that, hey, this is what we're seeing, and then also notify the affected communities when it happens. So, yeah.
Okay, Mandy, you have your hand up.
Yep, Joyce, thanks again so much for being there. I did want to Jamie's point, when the crisis first happened, all we had was the Navy to rely on. We didn't, as impacted families, I know the greater, community in Hawaii was utilizing Board of Water Supply. But we as impacted families didn't necessarily know where to turn. We were just getting all of our information from the Navy. And I think, the impacted families, huge lesson learned. Now we know who the good operators are in the community. And so we can definitely look to BWS and hopefully to DOH to put out that information. Joyce, I wanted to ask, as you know, over the past year, the Navy has refused to come to our CRI meetings, despite, Admiral Paparo testifying before Congress that once he, got in office and became the new INDOPACOM commander, he swore to that he would help rebuild trust. And clearly that does not happen. If anything, it's eroded. Um, has I know that you mentioned that you guys have made a diligent effort to go to their community town halls or open houses, but is the Navy communicating with BWS? Like, are they meeting with you guys, and are you guys involved in those conversations? Are they being good stewards of the profession and of the environment, and including BWS in these conversations about the shaft?
Yeah, thank you, Mandy. So prior to, I would say, for the past year, the communication between the Navy and the Board of Water Supply have dwindled down a little bit. I would say we used to have quarterly meetings with the Navy Closure Task Force. And before that, it was the Joint Task Force. When Admiral John Wade was here, they were very good in keeping that communication going both ways. And we would meet alternating between either on at their facility, at their office, or at the Board of Water Supply to just kind of go over the um, progress in closing out the facility, removing the defueling and everything like that. This past, I would say, in the minimum 1 year to now, we have not really had those meetings. I'm not too sure why, But definitely we've tried reaching out to set those meetings up, but we have not had the same types of meetings and frequency as we used to with Joint Task Force. But yeah, it's definitely reduced greatly. We don't actually, I don't think we've had a meeting with them since last December when we had that swarm tech memo meeting. That's about it.
Thank you so much, Joyce, for being here, and I appreciate your candid feedback and your transparency. I think it's important. Hopefully, our members of Congress, our congressional leaders, are listening to this, and the community at large is listening to this, because that which the Navy, projects out to the world is not actually clearly true. So, thank you, Joyce. I do appreciate you and
you.
all that BWS does for this community.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions from the CRI members?
I do have one. Has the Board of Water Supply gotten any updates from the dye trace study that is being conducted by the University of Hawaii at Manoa?
Yes, actually, we just met with them this afternoon.
Oh,
So so the UH researchers led the tracer study led by Dr. Tomas Porat. They've been very nice in agreeing to monthly meetings to just provide us updates on the tracer study. Unfortunately, they still have not detected any tracers in all of their monitoring wells. So their conclusion so far is that the aquifer flows are very different from what they had initially anticipated and thought it was. So they are still trying to continue to monitor for these detections and see what they can do from here on. But that's the latest update I can provide.
it's almost as if we have a very complex lava porous infrastructure under our island.
We do.
Is that the first report that you've received from them?
No, we've been regularly meeting with them since right after we found out that they had already introduced the tracer in February. So right after that, we reached out and asked, can we meet to kind of understand a little bit more about the study? And they were very welcoming and they said, yes, we can meet. And so since then, we've been meeting monthly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But so far, yeah, every meeting is just, sorry, we haven't seen anything.
Oh,
Yeah.
and then it'll go on until October.
As of right now, correct. But from what I heard, they might seek an extension, but not too sure where that may go.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions for Joyce, Lynn? Any questions in the audience? Oh, I think that's a clap. Is that a question? Is that okay? Any questions from the audience?
Patty.
Oh, Patty. Okay, thank you. Patty.
Oh, okay, sorry. Joyce, thank you for being there. I have two questions. How many monitoring wells has BWS been able to build since this whole thing broke out? And number two, what are your monthly test results of the closed shafts, civilian shafts looking like? Are you still detecting PFAS and anything else? Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you, Patty. In terms of monitoring wells that we've built so far, we actually have, let's see, one that was built a little bit before the 2021 spill. And we have currently 3 monitoring wells in construction. I actually presented this during our board meeting and I provided a map in that presentation. So we have monitoring wells site H, that's along Halava Valley Access Road, right next to the prison. We have a site A, it's right at the Halava District Park. We have a site D1, that's our first well at the animal quarantine station. And then we have 3 wells in procurement. That's a second well at the animal quarantine station. We have 2 monitoring wells proposed at the Mauna Loa Golf Course. And we also have a few more monitoring wells in design. So we are planning to put 3 monitoring wells at our Border Water Supplies Halawa Xeriscape Garden. That's kind of near our Halawa shaft at different depths. That's still in design right now, though. We also have, let's see, 2 more. So we have one at Alapu Malu Park. And we have the third one more. Oh, it's also further up in the Halawa Valley at one of our reservoir sites. So we have, yes, a series of monitoring wells at different stages currently. And sorry, the last question was, what was the last question? So monitoring wells, and then
What are your monthly testing
tests, correct.
for the closed shafts and wells?
Let's see. So we have our Halawa shaft shut down. We have our Aea wells and Halawa wells. I know we were picking up PFAS at Halawa shaft, as well as Halawa wells. And Aea wells, we had the PAH, the polycystic aromatic hydrocarbon detection back in last June. But in terms of the details, I apologize. I don't have the full report. I think that's our labs have that information.
I have one more question.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Regarding, and I just want to clarify, because we talked about this when we had the Navy at our meeting last month, and we were discussing the location of the Aiea Halawa shaft and the Red Hill shaft. I believe I remember the location of the Board of Water Supplies Halawa shaft does sit in between those 2 shafts, yes?
Yes.
Thereabouts.
Yes.
Just wanted the public to be aware of that fact.
Yes. So our Halawa shaft is northwest from the Red Hill bulk fuel storage facility, the Red Hill shaft, and Aiea Halawa shaft that's owned by the Navy is southwest of our Halawa shaft. So it's sandwiched.
Are there any plans with that Border Water Supply Halawa shaft? It's still closed.
It's remains closed as of right now, correct? We are proactively trying to look for exploratory wells, to try to develop exploratory wells to replace the sources that we lost or closed down. So we do have 2 projects out currently to drill exploratory wells in Aiea and in Newtown area, a little bit further away from where the contamination may be. But at the same time, because these are exploratory wells, we won't really know what quantity and quality of water we'll be getting out of these wells until it's drilled and tested.
Okay, thank you. Right. Any other questions for Joyce Lynn? Border Water Supply? Going once? Going twice? Okay, well, thank you. Oh, 3 times. We thank you again.
Thank you.
For being so diligent and coming to give us your mana'o on Border Water Supply. Thank you.
Happy to. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now I'm going to take things out of order because according to our agenda, we should have community concerns, community input at this time. So I'm going to go ahead and ask whether there are any members here. Well, I guess you folks don't need to do it, but those out in the audience and those as well in Zoom, if you have any community concerns, now would be the time. We're going to take a break from our normal agenda and then go back after we hear from those community members. And is that Susan? Did you just raise your hand? Yes, yes. I'm just doing a check right now. If we do have any community members who want to voice their concerns at this time, so that we can be at least as close to the items in the agenda as possible, and then we will go back to the questions on PFAS and GAC. Okay.
Well, I can voice my community concern, that knowing the knowledge that the Board of Water Supplies the lava shaft was shut down. We now have a report here that there are PFAS detected at this shaft. And it is sandwiched between the Aiea lava shaft, the Navy's Aiea lava shaft, and the infamous Red Hill shaft. Now, it seems rushed to, I'm no scientist, but it seems a little rushed to be opening up these wells without really seeing any results of this dye trace study.
Yeah.
That's my concern.
Yeah, definitely. That's how we feel about it as well.
Is there a question?
Okay, yeah, we do have someone who has a community concern on Zoom. Patty Choi.
Yeah, it's just based on what Joyce shared with us about the Navy's pilot testing. I think that was the term she used. Preliminary work on whether to help them determine if they can really open up these wells, shafts again. And I'm just expressing a concern that I wonder who's really, what's the oversight on this pilot testing? And if junk is found in the water, where are they getting rid of this water? And is this all in the hands of the Department of Health to oversee this pilot testing?
It is. As far as what we know from our last meeting, yes, it is under the jurisdiction of the Department of Health.
Yeah, my understanding as well, it is under the jurisdiction of the Department of Health, Clean Water Act. However, they are also subject to whatever testing that the Navy provides for them or to them. So that was my concern, is that for the Navy Aiea Halava shaft, there was no requirement for an EA or an EIS. And for the Red Hill shaft, and this is just for the GAC treatment facility, there is a requirement for an EA. But to my understanding, after having talking to Dennis about this, it's actually up to the Navy to make their own self determination as to whether an EIS or an EA or nothing is required, because there's no significant impact as a result of the facility. So they felt, Patty, I see your thumb down. That's the way I feel too. Yeah, there should be, as you say, an oversight more than just adhering to whatever the Navy has determined. And initially, that's what it appears that is the process right now. So unless someone knows anything more than that, yeah, we've always said there's got to be a follow-up or third party, independent testing. But other than the Board of Water Supply, they're the only ones that seem to be doing independent testing. Right, Joyce? Okay, any other community concerns or comments? Tara? Thank you.
Aloha.
Aloha.
Oh.
Can you hear me? Okay. So
Yeah.
it kind of might have to rewatch the part in the middle, but what I heard you saying about the reopening and what you just said right now about the Navy being the one to decide, that's a huge concern. And so my question would be, what can we do to make sure, again, to stop the process of the reopening of these wells, as I heard you say that they haven't, or it seems premature to go ahead, even if they haven't seen the results of like that dye testing. So what can we do to stop it? And I'm going to bring this in here because it has to do with the water. So as we know, the sewer fee increase is coming up, and it's going to be based off on, for example, water usage and encouraging people to, of course, use less water. Now, with that being the case, water and, regarding the sewage bill, but the water, how can we, again, stop this process? And then again, really hold the Department of Health as well as the EPA, of course, first and foremost, the Navy, to uphold their kuleana to keep the water safe. Mind you that, again, if the sewer, the ENV is trying to have, the residents on Oahu to conserve water, and knowing that the issue is ongoing with our water, and then that the Navy is going to open these shutdown wells, prematurely, and without the EPA and the DOH holding their kuleana for oversight, and to not trust the Navy ever again with their word and with their plans. What can we do as the community to stop that process? Because again, they open it, oh, oops, it's too early, and then it's contaminated again, but now on a larger scale. So what can we do process-wise to stop it? Hope that makes sense.
Yeah, good question, Tara. Thank you for asking that question. We would have to, because the Navy. Oh, Susan.
Community concerns after she's done.
Oh,
She's how I'm gonna be a community concern, because there's a lot of misinformation coming out that needs to be.
so, okay, Susan, you're saying over and above, because I was going to go back to the agenda and cover.
Your question, all the questions are gonna be answered by this part of the agenda.
Okay, so we'll call you next.
That's fine.
Okay.
I'm just giving you a heads up that they're not getting answers because you all don't have the answers.
Okay. Well, why don't we do this then? Why don't we do this? I think what I'm hearing is that a lot of the questions that are being asked.
It's fine, I can go.
We have to stick to what Tara was asking, though.
Okay.
We should answer her
Okay,
question
let's
first,
answer Tara's question first.
if we can.
If we can, true, very good.
Mhm.
And then we will go back to the agenda, because going back to the agenda will answer a lot of the questions that are being asked of
Yeah,
the
Thank you
community,
for that clarification.
right? That's where we're
Yeah,
at.
Okay, great.
Okay, very good.
Now we're all on the same page.
Okay.
Fantastic.
Okay. Okay, so Tara, I would say that regarding the military, their safety net or whatever, maybe it's not safety net, but the enforcement arm is the EPA. So you got that, right on the nose there. So we need to communicate with the EPA and voice our concern there. And we should also voice our concern to the Department of Health, because they're the ones that will ultimately give the permit after the facility has been built and the appropriate testing, according to the Navy, has been complied with. If those administrative remedies do not help, then our next resort is to file a lawsuit. That's pretty much where we are at. Clean Water Act. I mean, if you do know that I am one of the plaintiffs in Wai'ola Alliance versus the Department of Defense on a Clean Water Act lawsuit. So this will be something that I will discuss with my attorneys as well. Okay, now back to the agenda, right? Are we all in accord there? Back to the agenda?
Public comment.
Okay, true. Thank you. Anybody else, no one else has their hands up on the Zoom, and everyone here is pretty
I'd just like to
Good.
recognize that people will notice a difference in attendance here. we're doing our format a little different, just to split up the teams to make it a faster meeting and get the points across. And of course, we would have all the ultimate information that we needed if we had EPA, DOH, and Navy at the table every month. But it's quarterly, so this is when we get the questions, and that's when we can funnel it down, like from one person. So I appreciate your patience with that.
Okay, very good, very good.
So earlier on Wednesday, you all said that Bill would go before me. He won't be over here. so-
Yeah, well, you can go ahead.
Oh,
Yeah, and I'll fill
I
in
just
with
have to
you.
make sure.
I'll
that
fill in
we-
where I feel you've left some gaps.
We're talking about GACs.
Yeah, we're
Yes,
moving on.
but I need to make sure that the presentation is gonna come up, Rose. Thank you. Okay, so what I've put together is two parts. One are the actual photos and captions from the website so that you could see the real pictures and kind of get a better feel from seeing them. So you can go to the next slide. Oh, my disclaimer. This is my presentation on GAC technology. I put in my research to be able to show the pictures of the GAC farm. And part 2 is from the reactivation webinar. And I'll get to that as we finish through here, okay? So the little blue tent is where the contractors sit when they're doing their sampling. So there's sampling going on, and that's kind of like their little break tent, okay? Next slide. Those are the bags of media, the granular activated charcoal that are staged so that, you know, you don't have to place an order. They're all ready to be filling the GAC vessel. Next. That's one train. Okay. So there's a lead. That's the granular activated charcoal. And then the middle one is another GAC vessel. And then the third one is the ion exchange.
Could you just briefly explain what a train is?
Yes. I think I have another picture that's going to show it better. As a matter of fact, the next one. No, look, I'm going to stay right there. I'm going to stay where Bill was. Okay, so they have 4 trains. Each train looks like that. So there are 3 GAC vessels, and that configuration is called a train. So they actually have 4 sets. So when they have to replace the charcoal, they have to disconnect this guy, and there's another one already set up. That's the second train. Okay. They also have the 4th train is just for redundancy. But as they're passing through each of these 3 trains, the other ones are getting filled again in order to be prepared. So it's on a rotation basis. They're saying that the charcoal is good for 6 months, but during their pilot testing right now, they're doing testing to make sure, in other words, because they've got the 3 backups, they can just go ahead and switch out to number 2 or number 3. Thank you. Okay, how did that go, Bill? Did that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay, so the next one is a crane where they're lifting the media up to the top of the GAC. There will also be a worker up there with a funnel
And that's how that media is a big funnel. Okay, so don't think it's one of our kitchen funnels, but it's large enough, and that's to guide the media into each of the vessels. Okay, next one. So here you can see a better view of the trains, at least two of them. You can see a third one towards the end, but you get the picture that it's well planned in my mind. Because remember, I already have said that this particular design I support. However, I'm reserving that until I get to see the results of the pilot study, which is everybody's, that's what we all care about. I want to see what's happening, what the samples brought out, and, draw down on the data. So as far as the design, I support it. As far as the results, I can't answer that until I see their results. And you all know I will be digging into that data and presenting it as I find it. So the pilot study is very important. Department of Health, it's not monitoring. They are the people in charge of that pilot study with the Navy. The EPA is the oversight. So the Department of Health has to provide commentary, adjustments, anything that they think is not going the way the plan is supposed to go, the testing plan or the sampling plan. They are to talk to the samplers, and they're not Navy, but as you all know, the use of third party does not always fit what we would like to be a third party, but it is a contractor. And then skip this one. Let's go ahead and go to the next part. How many at the table got to watch the reactivation webinar? The Navy reactivation webinar.
No.
Hands? Oh, did you watch a replay? Okay. So this won't be redundant, and I'm very happy about that. So what I did with this, you can go forward, Rose, 2 slides. Yeah, one more. So I took the slides. You guys will be able to read this, I guess when Rose posts it on y'all's website. So I took the slides. First of all, I transcribed the whole thing, and then I pulled stuff for this presentation that would be relevant to what you all would be concerned about. So when you just flip to the next slide, and then you can come back so they can see the transcript. See? Okay, that's verbatim, but you'll be able to read that. I'll just put some pointers out there. Okay, you can go back to the previous slide. Thank you. So it's basically saying many of the things that I've already said, right? But during the webinar, which was done quite well, we got to hear it, okay? But for me, I always have to transcribe so I can actually take it in. So the final vessel is the ion exchange. The first two are the charcoal. So the water goes through the charcoal, but before it goes through the charcoal, it is sampled. Then the water comes out of the first vessel, it is sampled. Then it goes into the second vessel. When it comes out of the second vessel, it is sampled. Then it goes to the ion exchange, which is supposed to pick up the rest of the crap, okay? So PFAS, TPH, and PHA, which Joyce already told us what the acronyms mean, and it has a resin, and whatever's left over, it sticks to that resin. And as the water comes out of the ion exchange vessel, it is sampled again. So this is where it is very important for me to see all of those sampling intervals so that I can see what was coming out of what vessel at what time. Question, Bill?
No.
Okay. So there's 3 primary trains and 1 redundant. And let me go through the. Oh, they just talked about how extensively they monitored everything over the past few years, but yeah, they did. Nothing. The well cannot be opened until the Department of Health feels confident that they have fulfilled the testing requirements and made the water safe again, according to their definition of safe. Because remember, safe doesn't mean everything is at 0. There's going to be acceptable levels of stuff. But the levels have lowered, so that's a good thing. Okay, next slide actually shows you what it looks like inside of a GAC. So the top one is where you can see, that's where the charcoal is. They call it a carbon bed, but it comes out of the pump, then it goes into the top. That's where it goes through the carbon, and then it comes out. So right before it goes into the top, it's sampled. Then when it comes out the bottom part, it's sampled. And again, as I said it before, it is sampled, what, 1, 2, 4 times? 1, 2, 3. Yeah. So the ion exchange are negatively charged ions of materials that are retained by the resin. And I was trying to get a picture of this in my mind. And sticky resin reminds me of a fly trap where it gets stuck, the fly gets stuck on it and can't get off again. So, I mean, that's just my personal view. And when Susan and I were talking about the carbon, we were saying it's like a fish tank or a Brita. So the next page is also the transcript. I want to stop here. Are there any questions for that particular picture?
I have a quick question.
Sure.
Are these direct slides from their presentation?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So these are slides from their presentation.
Yes.
That are incorporated into your presentation.
Yes, because I wanted you all to be able to get the
Thank you.
transcription.
Yeah, thank you.
And that way you wouldn't have to watch it unless you want to see all the other slides.
Cliff notes.
Okay,
And this is the IAEA Halava. Is it-
this?
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, this is the process
pilot
that's going
program.
on right now.
Uh-huh.
Okay?
So,
It's the
okay.
pilot study.
And so this is what it looks like.
This is what it looks like. That's why I wanted you all to get the pictures in your mind.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Hopefully I
Yeah.
am delivering the pictures.
Yes, thank you. It's very helpful.
And then this is called, next slide, babes. I mean, Rose,
Fine too.
it's talking about the pre-reactivation pilot study. And I'm not going to repeat all of this, except for that they use terms like effluent. That's what's coming out of the ion exchange. And I believe Joyce would tell me that the one that's going in the first GAC is the influent.
Influence.
Effluent.
Correct?
Influent.
See, look at that. We all learned 2 new words today.
Exciting.
And then next slide, I'll point out one thing on the transcript, which I put in bold, which can be a question that you can send to the EPA, as I find it important. And I also find it that when you all ask questions, you get more information. Not that I didn't ask the question at the open house, but I think you should get it in writing.
I do have a question with
Yes.
regard to, one way to reduce waste is to, you can reactivate the spent GAC
Yes.
through thermal processes. Do they do that or do they just
No, they
toss?
haven't talked about doing that, and I think this is where I'm gonna go with your answer. When they find out the cost, I will think that they may consider exactly what you said. Yes, I read about that, but they haven't put any of that out because they're only gonna give us what they want us to know. So that one says treated water is discharged into the ground and conveyed into local storm drains. The storm drain part has been approved by the Department of Transportation, so that's not the biggie. It's discharged into the nearby ground. What do they mean by that? These are the questions you should be thinking about. What do they mean by that? And are you creating a problem with groundwater? So those are the two, and you may come up with more, but the main thing on this page is that if the DOH hasn't been satisfied, the adjustments are being made along the way as we speak. So they're not going to finish the pilot and go, okay, well, you guys didn't do this. You didn't. They're watching it carefully. So adjustments are being made as needed. And I don't think anybody wants this stain on their department to happen again. So I believe the Department of Health will be not wanting to have a black mark on their department. Now, did I help?
Yeah, you did. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm sorry, but I was just going, oh gosh, there's a question here. Okay. And I really do think that you'll be able to print these out. And these last slides that are transcriptions, you'll be able to get the feel for what they were saying, how they were saying it. I took out all the and the so with a comma. So I had to, make it nice and pretty.
Mahalo.
I just want to clarify, not, what I was saying earlier about the Department of Health. I'm just saying that the determination as to whether the pilot would have to undergo an EA or an EIS. Now, that is a self-determination by the Navy.
But
So-
the EA is for the Red Hill shaft.
Correct.
And you're asking about, now they said they don't have to do it.
That's right.
So if they did, then the Department of Health would say, yes, you do. Or the EPA would say, yes, you do. So there's a document that the Navy put out that explained everything about why it's not needed. And it's available to you if you want to read it. And so, does it make sense to me? Yes. But does it make sense to everybody? Not necessarily. And I always talk about confidence levels, and I usually talk about plus or minus 5 as 95%. I'm going to stick with 90% confidence level because I have to see the data. I can't say everything's okay unless I see what's coming out of the GACs. And then I'll put it into pretty bar charts for y'all.
Okay.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for putting up with me. And I love you guys.
We appreciate you.
So mahalo.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Oh, actually,
Tara might have a question.
oh yeah, Tara has a question and Mia Lisa has a question.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Mahalo nui.
You don't? Oh, you just wanted to
Yes,
tell
we
me.
do.
Okay. Tara has a
Oh.
question.
Mahalo nui, Susan. That really helps. Just like how you said, the questionable part is the treated is released into the nearby groundwater. Can I ask you, when I was reading your slide, really quick, when does
Can you
this 30-day current period end? And then two, so they're releasing that now. I heard what you said about nobody wants a black mark on their, on the record. However, where is it being released into, and
the storm drains.
oh,
The Department
but the
of
nearby route,
Transportation approved that water to go into the storm drains.
but is that separate from the nearby ground?
No, it goes from the ground. That's the question that you're going to ask the EPA to
Okay.
the storm drain.
Okay. And then when does this 30 period that's currently happening, when does it end?
But you know why I want you to ask the EPA, right? I want you guys to get it in writing. That's the
Okay.
most important thing for the CRI is to not get something verbal at meetings. Okay, you need to get things asked. Sometimes you need to save your questions and make the EPA send it to the Navy to get your answers. I'm just giving you
Okay.
my
The tips, yeah. So we can write to the EPA
oh, and
and CC the DOE.
the pilot is what month is it? It's probably ending soon because it was only supposed to be a 30-day study. So I believe they're putting their package together right now. They cannot reactivate until the Department of Health agrees that the data supports their design. They will not let that thing open unless the data supports it. Or we'll all raise
And the
hell.
public, yeah, will be a part of that process before they even make the decision. So to hold them, accountable. So
I'm
so
going to try
EPA
to
and
get the report before it becomes public because I know some people, so that's what I want to do. Sure, Tara. Anybody else?
No, I guess.
Like I said, thank you guys, and you're doing a great job. A lot of work, a lot of your time away from families. We all do appreciate that, and I just wanted to let you know that we know, I do, that you are using your own time for the Red Hill issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Bill, would you like to follow up?
Yes, I will. I'm going to just do a brief overview because a lot of that was covered in the last presentation. But I can give you sort of the pros and cons of the GAC filtration. I think that would be the pros. The advantages are it's effective for the long chain PFAS. And it's great for removing some compounds like PFOA, PFOS. I don't know the chemical breakdown of what that is at the moment. It also is established technology. It's been used for years in other areas. And then, as I mentioned earlier in my question, you can reactivate it, and that reduces it allows for reuse and reducing waste. The limitations on the GAC filtration is it has only limited efficacy for short chain PFAS, and you do need to frequently replace the GAC system, particularly the components, the charcoal. And the influence of water chemistry can be important because the presence of other organic materials in the water can compete with the PFAS for absorption sites on the carbon, and potentially reducing the system's overall efficiency. Now, again, the short chain PFAS, or where the limitations come in, the limitations of the GAC to complete the job, and that's where, as was mentioned, that they have the anion exchange resins as the last component of the choo-choo train to clean out the short chain PFAS. But even these are limited. They can't take everything out. And as was mentioned earlier, it would be good to see some of the sampling and the results, because I don't know how much or what levels they're going to consider safe. There are some other options for in lieu of anion exchange resins. You can use reverse osmosis and advanced oxidation processes. I won't go into those because they're mostly boring at this point, and too much information. But I think, just in conclusion, researchers are actively exploring new materials and methods to improve the removal of the short chain PFAS. Novel adsorbents, hybrid treatment systems, and other technologies. But, a lot of this is still in development. So that's a very brief overview. And if anybody has any questions, maybe I can try to answer them.
Yeah, I have a question
Yes.
regarding the ion exchange.
Mhm.
You're saying that it does filter out the short chain PFAS? What about the long chain? And what's the difference?
Well, the long chain, I would imagine the ion exchange would also, any long chain that got through. But again, you can think of these as sort of like filters. The heavier, the larger chain molecules get picked out with the activated charcoal, and then you're using the resins. I think the analogy of the little fly trap, you got flies, and they got really tiny flies, and that's where the fly trap comes in, i.e., in this case, in the real world, the exchange resin portion of the train. So,
Okay, now the discussion about what would be considered clean under, I guess, the EALs and the MCLs for PFAS is 4 parts per trillion. Now, we don't have a EPA certified lab on island. So how would we know whether the ion exchange,
the ion exchange.
exchange actually filtered it out to that minimal level?
Back to the mic, please.
The sampling process will tell you, so we'll see what the state or Department of Health is using as their minimum levels, right? So I'll see that, and I'll see if there's exceedances, or if there's detections, or if it's non-detect. So until those numbers come out, there's no answer, but 90% confidence level is what I'm saying right now until I see the data.
One thing we
don't
have
have a
to
lab here,
consider
so
is the fact that we have certain levels that we're considering safe now, but as further research is done, we might find that, wait, it should be a much lower level, because even those tiny little parts per trillion can cause cancer and other problems in our lives. So, again, this is sort of a moving target, because, okay, this is a good level now, but it may have to be lowered, because we may see some health problems come up with these so-called safe levels.
Yeah. Okay. I saw Susan Gorman Chang, your hand was up.
I guess this is a question for the Navy, which I understand you're taking questions and sending them to the EPA, which gets them to the Navy. So my understanding on the Red Hill shaft is being pumped to keep the plume at bay. And right now it's being discharged, but the plan is to get it pumped into the GAC filters and then to be used. So my question is this: if it has to be constantly pumped, what is their emergency plan in case of a hurricane, a tropical storm, a tsunami? They need to have backup do they have, or are they going to have backup generators on site? I asked this question and to the Navy at the Kapuna Council up in Waianae, and they said they would bring generators in, but I would like to see generators there on site, and diesel generators also have to be tested every so often so the diesel doesn't go stale. So yeah, are they going to have backup generators on site? Because in a disaster, there's no way they could get them there in time. So, and I know that the contaminants move slowly, but again, we don't want the plume to come in. So that's my
Yeah.
question. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, any other community concerns? Or any comments for Bill? Any questions for Bill? Okay, online, see no one has their hand up online. So why don't we then, what do we have? We have 6 minutes left. We skipped over a summary as to what happened in the April 24th CRI number 19
Looking at
meeting.
me.
Yeah, so who was the one?
I'll take a first jab at it.
Okay, very good. Lisa, go ahead.
To begin, we had 300 questions collected over the last year that the Navy was absent, and they said they'll look at it, they'll probably won't answer it. EPA acknowledged it and said they might have answered some of it, if not most of it. There was some from DLA and DOH, about 35 each. Still no answer. That's why we're starting to collect questions again. And my first comment to them, it was that I was disappointed that the Board of Water Supply doesn't have a seat at the table, and if they can at the next meeting. And EPA said that they will discuss. And I think their presence at the table is needed as a collective voice with the Navy, EPA, CRI to keep the community safe and everybody knows what's going on. In general, I thought the Navy was like presentation oriented as usual. And even though they're conversational, they couldn't or didn't answer any of the questions. And maybe they could invite a specialist that could answer, like a representative for the GAC treatment. And since the contaminants are still being tested, I asked where the contaminants coming from, like what source. And the Navy didn't have an answer. And by the way, these questions were brought up by Board of Water Supply. So I just wanted to repeat it to the Navy. And the next question was, how much will it cost to build each system, like the capital cost? No answer. And when will it begin operation? And as I mentioned earlier, they're already doing the pilot program and they expect to begin in June, next month or next week. And we specifically asked if the CRI can do a site visit to the GACs, to the shafts, just to learn more and to see for ourselves. And even though we have the presentation, we like to take a little field trip. And if there's nothing that they have to hide, we should be able to. So we've not asked that of the Navy, and that is my update. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead, Michelle.
I also recall that we had a discussion on the offer that the United States Navy did give the Department of Health for a EPA certified lab. The Department of Health said that they could not accept the facility that the United States Navy was providing because it did not include maintenance. So my suggestion then, and it still stands, that if this EPA certified lab was created, can we not get the whole entire Indo-Pacific region to fund maintenance of this lab? Because as we know that there is contamination throughout the Indo-Pacific region due to the military presence. And that's just my idea. It seemed that everyone in the room had unanimously agreed that that was a good idea. So hopefully we can make that a reality, and because it seemed like everybody agreed. So hey, let's make it happen.
I think they need some chemists also.
Yes.
Yes. So
Yes.
engineers.
Yes. Train them up.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else, Bill? Relima? No?
Maybe a comment, it's talking with the Navy spokesman was sort of like watching someone trying to do a hula while stepping on rakes. So that's my comment.
Okay. I mean, it was also raised that the Navy had not been present in any of our meetings for last year. And I think that's pretty substantial. And then they, I guess they confirmed that they'll only will be meeting with us quarterly instead of, what was it, twice each quarter. And so the Navy confirmed plans to clean and remove 10 miles of pipeline by fall of 2025. 10 miles of pipeline. So that's positive, you know, to at least remove the pipeline so we don't have to see a risk of reopening at some point in time since they've already spent millions of dollars to defuel in the first place. Okay, concerns were raised about the wastewater disposal from tank cleaning. Yeah, and from community members questioning its impact on West Oahu's overburden wastewater facilities. Okay, and then I got that the Red Hill dye tracer study, we talked about this earlier, that the Office of Naval Research is ongoing until October of 2025. But the FTAC members have emphasized a continued research beyond 2025 to fully understand the groundwater flow patterns. Okay, and then I did bring up the issue regarding the EA and EIS. That kind of hits me, you know, when it comes to the pilot project as well as the Red Hill Shaft. The Red Hill Shaft is has an EA, but I think early on we've discussed that any of these, when it comes to drinking water, should all be subject to an EIS so that there will be public input and, you know, areas in which the community can put their concerns in writing and add to the EIS. Okay.
I think we're at the time, and our technicians do need to get.
Oh, are we out of
Yeah.
time?
We are at that magic
We
hour
are.
at
It's
7
7
p.m.
o'clock.
But
Oh, that's right. Okay. We have a hand up though. Can we take Jamie's comment? Real quick.
Aloha.
James.
I just from a community member watching from afar, and I wanted to, I know the Navy watches these, at least we hope they do.
Yeah.
To
Good point.
remind them that to use better audio equipment or a different location. Because for us family members and affected community members or people that are not able to make it to the facility that they chose to hold it at, we were unable to hear quite a bit of the meeting and the technical difficulties. So I just urge them to put more effort into figuring out their technical bugs. We know that they have a good PR team. We know that they are good at putting on commencement speeches all over the island. So hopefully they will be able to find us a better facility where everybody can hear and can participate. And finally, I just wanted to put one last thing out there for the Red Hill Registry to save the date for August 2nd, that they are planning a family fun oriented event, and stakeholders and community members will be invited for the launch. And if you are there, or if you want to be there, just go to redhill@registry.com or to sign up in order to have email alerts in order to attend. And anybody, regardless if you were not affected, slightly affected, or severely affected or impacted, please fill out these surveys and join the registry. You know, there's proof that these symptoms don't go away, and there's families that have been infected for a long time. There's families that were there a short time and don't feel they were affected, but it may creep up on you years later. And this registry really is not just going to impact the family members, but the community at large and help Oahu. So I thank you guys, and just needed to slide that in for Tara. But we need better sound with the next meeting for the Navy, please.
Okay, all righty. Thank you very much. We've come to the close. I just want to have a quick again acknowledgement and thank you to our technical team from the women's facility, Ashley, Barbara, Nisha, Tehran, and Kylie. Thank you. I hope you learned a lot this evening. Okay, that's great. And thank you to Olelo. Thank you to our speakers, Christina Bear and Joyce Lynn. Thanks again for coming. And of course, always Susan Picola Davis and everyone for
And Susan
participating.
Vermonten.
So please have a good and safe evening, the rest of your evening. And thank you again. And we'll see you next month. Thank you.
Yay. I was just gonna acknowledge.
Oh, go ahead.
Great job, guys.